We're going to go ahead and take care of FRQ Prep 2 in the financial sector unit, hopefully help you out with the exams a little bit. Two problems here. They're both short AP problems. This is problem number 3 from 2017, and this is problem 2 from 2007 Form B. Excuse me. And so this one says, assume businesses are granted a tax credit on spending for machinery. Using a correctly labeled graph of loanable funds, show the effect of the business sector's response. Now assume instead, so that means this is a separate problem, right? These are basically two separate problems. That the tax rate on interest income from household savings is lowered. Whew, that's a mouthful. And there is no change in government budget deficit. Okay. Using a correctly labeled graph, show the effect. C, given your answer in C, what will happen to the PPC in the long run? I must have made a mistake here. Let's go ahead and say that this is for B. This is for given your answer in B, because it may be different for A and B. So let's take a look. A, it says using a loanable funds market. So we're just going to go ahead and draw that right off the bat. And QLF, I sub R, really important for the loanable funds market. Downward sloping demand, upward sloping supply. And we're going to need to start with I sub 1 and Q sub 1. And it says that they're granted a tax credit on spending for machinery. So this would happen, a tax credit would happen after they spend. So they have to spend first, and then they get the tax money back. So sorry about that. This basically means they get this tax credit after they spend, and so they're going to need to spend the money up front, and then they get this tax credit, a benefit on their taxes. And so we'd say that if they need to spend the money, then they're going to have to borrow that money. They're going to have to borrow it. So that will increase the borrowing in this market, increase demand. And we'll kind of see here Q sub 2 and I sub 2, and that's a higher interest rate. So we went ahead and took care of that one. Part B, assume instead that the tax rate on interest income from household savings is lowered. So the taxes are lowered on this, on interest income from household savings. So that means that people are going to be more incentivized to do this, right? Taxes disincentivize people or discourage people from doing things. So if we lower the taxes on this, then people will do this more. So savings will increase. And so that's kind of the way to think about that, is savings will increase. So let's go ahead and draw our graph. QLF, I sub R, really important in the loanable funds market, and S, and I sub 1, and Q sub 1. And now, if there's an increase in savings, the savers are the supply curve. So we're going to increase that, shift this curve to the right, and increase to the right, and we find that the quantity is larger and the interest rate is lower. Now it says C, given your answer in part B, what will be the effect on the PPC in the long run? Explain. Okay, so here this is saying, what about this interest rate? So we're going to put down here C, if I sub R goes down. We would expect C and I to go up, and especially I, which is responsive. And so we would say, therefore, in this part, an increase in capital equipment. Because if they're doing this, then that's actually on capital equipment. And so, therefore, increase in productivity or productive capacity. You could say productivity or productive capacity. And so what will happen to the PPC curve? And we're running out of space here. Therefore, the PPC shifts out. It's better to say out than it is right, because it's actually saying that it does one of these. It goes out. Because now we can produce more of both consumer and capital goods because of that higher investment spending. Okay, let's take a look at the second problem here. This is 2017, number 3. A country is at full employment and produces two goods, capital and consumer goods. Okay. Draw a correctly labeled graph of the PPC with consumer on the X and capital on the Y. Indicate X representing full employment and a combination where both goods are being produced. Okay. So part A. And here, and it said that consumer are on the x-axis, so we're going to put con down here and cap up here. And it doesn't matter if we do a curved line or not. It's probably more technically accurate to have a curved line. And we'll say point X right there. Now assume there is an increase in the country's national savings. Draw a correctly labeled graph of the loanable funds market showing the change in real interest rates from the increase in savings. In other words, do that picture. So this is good practice. This is why we do this, right? We do this because it's practice. Loanable funds, really important to have the R. QLF, downward sloping demand, upward sloping supply, and an increase in supply. So the interest rate goes down from I sub 1 to I sub 2, and quantity goes up to Q2. So this dot and this dot. Okay. And then it says, on your original PPC, show another point labeled Z that represents full employment and a new combination of consumer and capital goods consistent with the increase in the country's national savings. So this requires you to deconstruct some things here. The new point Z is going to have to be on the curve because it's full employment. On the curve. Then, a new combination of capital consistent with the increase in the country's national savings. In other words, people are consuming less. Well, people consume consumer products. They don't consume capital products. Capital equipment is used to make more stuff, which is what affects productive capacity. So in other words, we would have a new point that's further along the curve towards the capital goods, point Z here, in the short run. Now, in the long run, this is what we would expect. The PPC would shift outward in the long run. But in a temporary situation, if people start saving more of their money, then they're not consuming as many consumer products, but there is still going to be money being spent on capital goods. So this idea here is that in the short run, reallocation, but in the long run, your economy could produce more. So hopefully this helps you make sense of 2 more free response practice problems. I'll see you next time.